President Trump at the crossroads. I'm Michael Smerconish in the Philly Burbs. The president can either cut a deal to curb Iran's nuclear program or launch a war. The U.S. military continues to deploy ships and aircraft to nearby waters in what appears to be the largest military buildup since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. On Friday, the USS Gerald R sailed into the Mediterranean, further escalating tensions as American and Iranian envoys continued to negotiate. Iran preparing a new draft proposal after nuclear talks with the U.S. Iran's foreign minister optimistic about a deal. He told MS Now they're hoping to hand over the proposal to President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, soon. He also said the U.S. has not asked Iran to halt uranium enrichment and that Tehran has not offered to suspend it voluntarily. President Trump warns that he's considering limited strikes on Iran to pressure the country into a deal. He's insisted that Iran cannot obtain a nuclear weapon, but has not said what precisely his objectives would be if he ordered a strike, but gave a stark warning to Iran.
Do you have any message to the Iranian people?
The Iranian people in Iran or people here?
People in Iran.
They better negotiate a fair deal.
Potential attack plans presented to the White House range from quick strikes to more extensive operations that could last weeks. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has blocked a request from President Trump to allow U.S. forces to use UK air bases during any preemptive attack on Iran, saying that it could break international law. As escalations continue, satellite images showed that Iran is fortifying several of its nuclear facilities using concrete and large amounts of soil to bury key sites. Joining me now to discuss all this, CNN political and national security analyst David Sanger and senior military analyst and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Admiral James Stavridis. Admiral, let me begin with you. Tell me about the firepower that we've assembled in the Middle East.
You started with a comparison to 2003. It's also like 1990, Persian Gulf War I. This is a huge amount of U.S. firepower. And let's kind of do it from the outside in, if you will, in concentric rings descending like Dante's Inferno. On the outer rings are big strategic bombers. They can come all the way from the United States. They can operate from other bases, but at distance. Inside are the two aircraft carriers. One you see there on the screen. It's in the northern part of the Indian Ocean. The other one is going to park right against Israel, where you see the word Syria on that chart. So now you've got two axes. These are 80 combat aircraft each, with F-35s, our most advanced jets, as well as plenty of F/A-18 Hornets. And then you go inside that, and you've got the capacity to launch Tomahawk missiles. You can send drones in. You can use cyber. And of course, there's land-based aircraft, Air Force aircraft at many of those bases you show there. So again, think of it like Dante's Inferno descending. Right in the center of it at the very bottom is Ayatollah Khamenei. I agree with President Trump. He would be wise to negotiate.
David Sanger, you've written, rarely in modern times has the United States prepared to conduct a major act of war with so little explanation and so little public debate. Expand on that, please.
Well, Michael, as we've heard from the Admiral, there's a huge amount of firepower out there, but it's not clear toward what end. So the president has really laid out four different objectives at various points. One is halt the nuclear program. It's interesting because he said he had obliterated the major nuclear sites before. The Iranians are not enriching uranium right now, but I agree with the Admiral. This would be a superb moment, backed up by all this gunboat diplomacy, to negotiate something that would be long-lasting. But he's also talked about protecting the protesters. He's talked about making sure that Iran does not support terrorism. It doesn't have very much money to go do so right now, but it certainly has in the past. And of course, he's talked about eliminating those missiles that the Israelis are worried about, conventional missiles that can reach Israel. And he's not given a speech to lay out what his objectives are. He's not answered the question of whether or not he's really seeking regime change. And since we're not going to put troops on the ground, he's been pretty clear about that. If you did topple the regime, there's very little control to make sure that what came in would actually be a democratic state. You know, it could well be the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps taking control. we tried a coup in Iran in 1953. And Iranians, still learn about this in school every day. And there is the possibility that this then has a backlash against the U.S. rather than against the Ayatollah.
Admiral, you're the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. What's the role of NATO? What's the role of our allies? I made reference to Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, in my setup. Are we going it alone?
Not quite alone. We have one big ally. We have the biggest aircraft carrier in the region. It's called the State of Israel. So that ally alone brings quite a bit of firepower. And by the way, the Israelis bring not only the same kind of conventional capability, precision-guided weapons, F-35s, much of it purchased from us, but they also bring very significant cyber capability. They're among the very best in the world. They have the best special forces in the region. They have incredible intelligence. So I think in terms of allies, it really is Israel. The Europeans are going to kind of lean back from this. I'm disappointed that the British Prime Minister would not evidently allow us to use British facilities. He's talking about Diego Garcia, the island in the Indian Ocean. But believe me, we have all the capability in the world to get this done between ourselves and the Israelis. Final thought, Michael, and picking up David's point of objectives. Another way to think of it is, what are the military options the president has? He can go non-kinetic. He can use cyber, directed energy, information warfare. Second option, the one he's talking about, kind of limited precision guided strikes, maybe go after leadership, Revolutionary Guard leaders. That would be a campaign of a few days. Number three, he could go big with the forces he's got there. You mentioned 2003. We talk about those campaigns as shock and awe. I don't think we're headed there, but that would be a campaign of some number of weeks to really cripple more or less permanently the Iranian military-industrial complex.
David Sanger, you know the president well. You've covered him extensively. You were part of that New York Times group that spent 3 hours with him in the Oval Office recently. So I put my unusual question to you. Should the Ayatollah be nervous that the administration just lost the tariff battle in the Supreme Court?
Well, you can certainly argue that the president is probably feeling right now the first pushback on his powers that he's felt really in the first year of his presidency. For the first time, the courts have sort of come in a big way and said, this is not within the powers of the presidency unless the tariffs that he had imposed were not legal. And he may well want to push back by showing that he can operate in an area where the Constitution gives him an enormous amount of leeway. But even here, the interesting question is, this would clearly be an act of war. I mean, the way you test it is if somebody massed this kind of force off the United States and threatened to conduct this, we would consider that a potential act of war. And yet Congress has not issued either an authorization to use military force, as they did in the case of Iraq, or passed a war resolution. And, what did the president tell us in that interview? He asked whether there were any limits on his power. He said, really only my own morality. That's the only limit that I have.
David Sanger, Admiral Stavridis, we appreciate you both. What are your thoughts at home? Hit me up on social media. I'll read some responses throughout the course of the program. From the world of X, follow me on X. I wonder how the MAGA movement feel about the concept of Trump's seeming interest in attacking Iran, potentially starting another war after promising to end the same. I think we're going to learn some things Tuesday night, right? I mean, I've got to believe that this is going to be a significant part of the State of the Union address. Who knows if something happens between now and Tuesday? But I look forward to the president making his case because, as just suggested by David Sanger and Admiral Stavridis, we're really not sure on what basis he's proceeding. And by the way, to the extent that the basis on which he's proceeding is nuclear, it would be an admission of sorts that last, was it June? We didn't obliterate their program. So please, Mr. President, make the case, is what I'm saying.